So I'm going to talk about the Havamal verses 30 through to 33 and go through the verses really. In verse 30, I mean, it's talking about really being a good host and to not belittle one of your guests in front of other guests, really. I mean, if you know that they're not, I don't know, equipped to deal with, I don't know, a topic of conversation, then I guess really it's saying about being tactful and not actively making them a part of the conversation that's going on at the time. I mean, it's one of those things, is certain subjects may come up in any social situation that you might not know anything about, or don't think that someone is essentially going to offer anything of value to the conversation, or likely to, if someone is likely to make a fool of themselves in a conversation by you bringing them into it, then just don't do it. I mean, it's one thing, or it's another thing if that person actively enters into the conversation. There's not a lot you can do about that, but don't deliberately bring someone into a conversation where you might end up making them look foolish because they're not equipped to talk about the conversation. I mean, it can be anything really. It's knowing what you can know about your guests and how they're going to interact with each other. I mean, really, this segment of the Havamal is all about social interactions and social validation, or invalidation, because obviously if you bring someone into a conversation where you know they are likely to make a fool of themselves, and you do that deliberately, you're going to create sort of a knock-on effect that you might not be very proud of yourself for doing. And that's not really the duty of a good host, to make their guests look foolish. I mean, ideally you want everyone to have a good time, to be relaxed and to enjoy each other's company, to learn things certainly, or be enlightened. I say there's other verses of the Havamal which is just like, don't speak and make yourself known to be a fool, and you can learn from listening. And of course, not everyone is going to take to heart the lessons of the Havamal, or even consider the Havamal being something that they want to consider being of worth in itself. But, or even still, if you are Norse pagan and you are following the guidance of the Havamal, then that's a different matter. You do your best to be a good host. And obviously in verse 31, it's talking about sort of a social situation where you've got a person, if they are starting to insult a target of some sort, whether they're at the gathering, the social gathering, or not, and it's the wisdom that Odin is suggesting is you should retreat from that conversation. I mean, there's a couple of ways, a couple of angles you can look at this. That it could be you know who is being talked about, or you don't know who's being talked about. And obviously if you know who's being talked about, you got some decisions to make. I mean, if they're talking about someone that is a friend of yours and you are following the guidance of the Havamal, then you are going to be duty bound to defend that friend and put this guest on the spot, as it were, which kind of then puts you in a bit of a contradiction with the preceding verse where it's don't belittle a guest in your home. So if a guest in your home is now sort of attacking someone else, the best thing that's being suggested is to retreat from the conversation. Because, and say, the following section is that you don't know if friends of the person being ridiculed are present and then duty bound to defend their friend from the people that are, in essence, slandering them. I mean, this is what we're talking about, or invalidating them. And the fact that the friends are not going to have this. A good friend, a loyal friend, is going to defend the person that's being targeted, because that is what friends do. You don't tolerate sort of insults by doing nothing about it. I mean, this is sort of where we get to verse 32, where loyalty, which obviously later in the Havamal it talks about be friends to your friends and don't be friends to your friends' enemies, and that as we are in this faith defined by our deeds and oaths, to be a friend with someone means you defend them, you support them, and obviously when there's a social situation happening where someone is being slandered, the friends are duty bound to defend their friend, and that's going to go in sort of two ways. Either way, it's going to be conflict of sorts. I mean, obviously in today's day and age, it's validation and invalidation and arguments, and that's essentially what's going to come down when someone starts ridiculing another person. And it happens, let's say you can be a guest at a venue where this happens, you can be the host, or you can be the target at another gathering. And obviously in multiple ways, you don't want this to happen when you're hosting something. You don't want, well, you'd like to think that your friends will defend your honour, will defend you if this is happening where you're not present and someone is attacking you. And obviously if it's there to be witnessed, then let's say you're duty bound in a couple of ways to either defend your friend or to make a tactful retreat from conflicting sources. Now the final verse, verse 33, is is when you visit a friend's house, is to go to be as best prepared as you can be. And I see this as being sort of, don't be starving, because that puts you in a different frame of mind. And obviously don't go to a friend's house full up either. Don't go having just eaten your dinner and like go to your friend's house and it's like, oh, I've made you dinner. Oh, I'm not hungry. I mean, you are making faux pas without sort of being prepared or willing to do it, and you're going to do it accidentally if you don't consider what you are likely to encounter. I can say a good host is going to want to make sure you are fed well, that you are watered well, drink well, and that you are comfortable. And if you, let's say, you turn up to someone's house and they've laid out a feast and you've just, I don't know, had a big meal, you're going to be a poor guest, because you then are taking you're dismissing the hospitality of your host. And obviously the other thing, and it talks about in earlier verses, if you deny yourself and attend someone's house when you're starving, thirsty, or whatever, then you're likely to make a glutton of yourself or show yourself up, because obviously you're going to want to fill that hole. And it's, I say, it's one of those sort of underlying really important philosophies of life, that nothing is really bad for you. It's have the sweets in moderation, have the alcohol but in moderation, go raiding and pillaging in moderation. I mean, okay, we're not going to do that in the modern age. That's just a joke in moderation. But it's, be a good host, be a good guest, be a good friend. And they're the things to really take from these sections of the Havamal. It's, nothing is expected of you than what you can be and what you can expect or hope to expect from other people, and live your best life. So that's how I'm going to end these notes on social validation, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for watching my video. Goodbye.